Saint Vigilant Garling has just become one of the most hated men in all of One Piece. God Valley, it is over, Xebec is no more, and his death is causing King Harold to spiral into the madness of offering himself up as a slave of the world government. This is a big one, mate. So much to get into. And first up, I'm personally really glad that we had this chapter to close off the God Valley incident. It was very possible that it could have concluded at the end of the last chapter on that sort of cliffhangery moment. But this is the final saga, man. We are in wrap-up mode, and so we now get to see the death of Xebec. Roger and Garp are down. They're unconscious because they did a really big thing and hit the hockey really hard and all that. And we cut to Rox regaining himself ever so briefly. And then Oda gives us this very cool perspective shot of the three holy knights, a Garling, a Summers, and a Maffy. And we see them upside down because that is how Rox is looking at them. It might seem pretty pointless to linger on that very sort of basic creativity, if you can call it that, but it's very rare in One Piece that Oda uses a perspective shot. He tends to prefer framing things from the outside in, and I think it is a very effective way to portray Rox's final moments, because allowing the readers to step into his perspective allows us to confirm that there is no longer any demonic presence. Rox right here is as human as you or I. And that's why the three Holy Knight figures are so imposing. We know that these guys aren't really a big deal compared to the true heavy hitters, but having been reduced to the state of a defenseless human, you can really feel the horror of their oppressive energy. And this was a really good death scene. Oda has this tendency to go real big and explosive with death scenes, going out with a bang, very literally, like Pell, Pedro, Pagaya, all of the will of P, regardless of whether they die or not. We still get the bang, but Rox went out with a whimper. It's not at all what you would have expected of one of history's most powerful pirates, and I love that Rox's last words were more or less the same as Ace's last words. They both wanted to say thank you before they departed. Rox thanks Roger and Garp for stopping him, and he also expressed his desire to have Roger and Garp escape this situation, which not quite sure how they do. We just cut to them being carried away by Scopa-Gaban and Ray Lee, but they were right there. So you do need to ask, why didn't Garling kill them as well? One Piece was actually the last of the big three series that I got into in around the mid-2000s. It all started with Naruto, and after I finished that, I moved on to Bleach. An extremely formative and nostalgic experience, and that is why I am thrilled that the sponsor of this video is Bleach Soul Resonance, featuring an immersive storyline where I can re-experience that glory, carving my way through Ikaku, Kenpachi, Renji, and Byakuya all over again, all with innovative blade clashing gameplay, because this isn't your regular action RPG. This is all about Zanpakuto. And your skill with the blade determines your everything. Victory could be decided in an instant or mercilessly robbed from you in that very same instant. That's all up to you, but I would strongly recommend you do the first one. Along with some seamless character switching to create wonderfully synergistic combos and forge your way through to victory with the bonds of friendship or just the bonds of wanting to win. They're both very good bonds. And the game in general, mate, it is so damn clean and impactful. This game will make you feel that Bankai, whether it's yours or whether it's being used against you. So you can and should download Bleach Soul Resonance through my link in the description. I've been loving reliving my own personal Bleach nostalgia in this modern incarnation, so definitely check it out. But for now, it's back to you, me. I guess it doesn't matter too much for now. What I'm more taken in by is the brotherhood between the Gold, the Monkey, and the Davy, and I hope that at some point in the future, we have a scene of all three of them together as rookies and explore the connection that these D-wielders have with one another, because they all clearly know so much more about their shared heritage than, say, Luffy does, who knows nothing. Now, Garling, how do I put this? He's a complete shower of shit in this chapter. He's the one who took the finishing blow on Rox. And ladies and gentlemen, I give you your champion of God Valley. Prick. As much as I hate it, it is a very good move by Oda though, because Garling, he needed something to work with. He's set up as one of our final big bad antagonist men, and I do hate him significantly more now, knowing that he came in at the last second to take Rox's life. Although that's his specialty, really, isn't it? Garling, he's a phenomenal fighter when he's up against the prone, nothing else. So I'm very invested in seeing his downfall. And given his relation to Shanks, Garling was expected to be more of a combat powerhouse, and he still may be. I mean, he was up against Rox after all, so it's probably not a fair way to judge him, but young Garling feels to me more like a competent Spandam or Archie kind of character, or the final evolution of whatever that archetype is. All of the negative personality traits, but combined with with the power to actually back their dickery up. Mon Garling, old man Crescent Moon Garling, he does feel a bit different. He's much more reserved and he seems a lot less arrogant. However, we still have yet to see Elder Garling with his public mask off. Something tells me he's probably not changed too much in the grand scheme of things. And of course, Garling, being the man to kill rocks, makes Loki's overall situation that much more tragically hilarious, as his life has now been impacted by all three Figolins. Figolin Garling killed his hero, Figolin Shanks stopped his ambition, and then Figolin Shamrock came down to take a shit on him and stab him with a dog sword. These Figolins, mate, they're a problem, and they all have the same face. But back to Rox, there's a few different layers of tragedy happening here. One is that I do wonder if Rox could have survived if his crew came back for him like Rayleigh and Scopper Gaban went back for Roger and Garp. And I wonder if the message here is that if you want to reach this peak and fulfill this will business, you can't do it alone. Just as Rox says to Loki later in the chapter, with all of the business about his desire to combine forces with Harold and become unstoppable, but also in the way that a pirate king needs his wings. And that's why Luffy may succeed where so many others have failed, because he has the backing of not just his wings, but his entire crew. And this does make me a bit bitter about the crumbling of the Rocks Pirates, how that occurred, because I'm still not personally sold on Big Mom, Kaido, and Whitebeard not realizing that Rocks wasn't himself. Like, how can you see your captain be transformed into an almost comically stereotypical demon after being pierced by this black monster and not go, hey guys, I think that something strange might be happening here? And if Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido had as much faith in Rocks as Rayleigh and Gaban did in Roger, then who knows what kind of world we'd be living in today. To be fair though, I don't even know what I'm looking at right now, because we see the disappearance of God Valley, and the metaphor here is like a stage curtain coming down with all the fog and such, and then something divine punishment. And this does not appear to be a use of the ancient weapon Uranus, which I don't think they could use even if they wanted to, due to not having Vegapunk's homebrew Mother Flame back then. It doesn't look quite as efficient as a racing Lucia, or like it's capable of pushing the land down and raising the sea levels. And it may be that God Valley had a remnant left over like O'Hara. O'Hara is still kind of there, there's just nothing there. And it definitely adds a lot more to the theory that Thriller Bark is actually the remnants of God Valley. What we're facing is the very real possibility that this is an extension of Imu's power as a potential sea and or rain god. It's been referred to as both, depending on whether we're talking about Elbaf or Shandora. But this is quite the 2 pages. I really like these 2 pages because it closes a curtain, but it also opens up a curtain of the 9 story threads that come together to form the one piece we have today. This is the end of the era of Rocks, but it's also the beginning of the era of Roger, as well as planting major seeds for the great age of piracy after Roger, with Baby Shanks, Kuma, Ivankov, Dragon, and Teach on the left-hand side. And the way that Oda drew everyone, it's almost in order of age, because he goes Garp, Roger, Whitebeard, Big Mom, Dragon, Kaido, Dragon, and all of those are perfectly in order of oldest to youngest, but then in pops Baby Shanks and we've ruined the whole thing. Although how could you ever accuse Baby Shanks of ruining anything, especially when we have these 2 pages next up covering the Roger Pirates? And these 2 pages, shockingly familiar, and that's because we've seen them both before, as Oda redrew the famous sketch of the Roger Pirates opening a chest to discover Baby Shanks, and this was done as part of the special volume that was given to film Red attendees. And it's pretty incredible to see this page finally realized. I'm really glad that Oda decided to plonk it in with more or less no changes. There's a few. One big change on this page is that Roger has his mustache and captain's hat, which is a continuity issue that we've covered before. But what we haven't covered before is that a lot of the first page of this Roger section is also a redraw. The film Red book came with 2 pages depicting the aftermath of God Valley, the first being the Otter Jackson sailing away from the island, Roger greeting his crew crowded around some treasure, like it's Pirate Christmas. This chapter even has the same dialogue in Japanese as the original sketch did, and there are a couple of major changes here, of course, one of which is that Roger was also originally depicted with his mustache and captain's hat. Oda also added Shaki and Rayleigh, and took the God Valley Island out completely and replaced it with a panel of Roger exiting his room. But because these were pages that we saw all of the way back in 2022, even though they're new to the actual manga, this whole section felt triply nostalgic to me. And we then cut to the birth of Garp the hero, as we are told the headline spread by Big News Morgans, and we know it's him because we see a whole legion of his news crews leaving an island that looks quite ornate, and like Oda spent a fair bit of time designing it. I don't recognize it, and if you do, you know the drill, let me know what it is in the comments. But we also see 2 other locations reacting to this news, and one of them looks somewhat similar to the Rommel Kingdom because it has the big Ben-like structure in the middle, the Rommel Kingdom being where the legend of Hakuba was born. It might not be be that though other islands are allowed to have their own phallic clocks. But either way, Garp, mate, he is furious about his new status in life. And it looks like Morgans did cut a deal with the world government, and luckily for Garp, he is their only option for a smooth story. Lucky because he did punch Emu in the face, or what we think is a face, on God Valley, and also lucky because it allows him to get away with what he's about to do next with Dragon. But before that, we do have a difficult conversation between Garp and Sengoku, which boils down to, yes, the world government, it does horrible things, but there's not a single action we can take from the bottom of the hierarchy. This is Sengoku's ideology, and I get where he's coming from, but funnily enough, he's falling into the very same trap that Sakazuki would also fall into several decades later. Sengoku's plan seems to be to get promoted right to the top and then institute his own justice to change the world, which in Sengoku's case, I believe would have been for the better. In Sakazuki's circumstance, what he wanted to do was a much harsher approach to justice, but it doesn't matter in either case because both of them ended up being equally as powerless. I recently did a video about the trap of becoming a Marine Admiral, and about the higher up you go in this organization, the more power you have, but the less freedom you have to exercise it, which is why Dragon, with the lowest rank of everyone in the Marines, was the one most able to make a difference on God Valley. But it's also something that Garp is keenly aware of, and that's why from this moment on, he put a lot of distance between himself and the Marine hierarchy. And Garp, he's pretty disgusted by Sengoku's logic. At the moment, I would give Sengoku the same benefit of the doubt that I've been giving Garp though. We don't know what he did during his time as Fleet Admiral, and he could be the reason why stuff like Sword exists. So he could have done a ton of good, but Garp does say that he will kill Sengoku if he ever becomes corrupted by the world government, perhaps foreshadowing for a certain man later on who's taking on the ideology of the world government. But for now, this is very reassuring to Sengoku. But Garp isn't really on board with Sengoku's logic here. He's definitely showcasing that trademark monkey desire to solve the problem right here and now by punching a dude. But Garp does acquiesce for the same reason that we've heard before, and it's because he feels a duty to protect those at the bottom of the hierarchy. Which doesn't just mean Marine soldiers, it means civilians. Civilians are the ones right at the bottom of the hierarchy. And we're actually given a number in this chapter. Sengoku says that the Marines have millions of personnel across the world, which is inclusive of all world government allied nations. And one of those millions, up until now, was Garp's own son. And I'm gonna jump to that now while we're on this topic. Later on in this chapter, we have a scene of Garp breaking Dragon out of prison, pretty immediately proving Garp's theory of the case in my opinion, because without someone like him sitting at the top to protect those at the bottom, Dragon likely would have been executed and there would be no revolutionary army today. And when I first saw Garp and Dragon on the same page, something felt rather strange to me, and I couldn't immediately work out what it was, but I think it's because this is the first time that we have seen the two of them interact in the series ever. We've seen Luffy and Garp a lot, and we've even got that one brief moment of Luffy and Dragon together at Logtown, but never Garp and Dragon, not until now. And despite what Dragon says here, we do know that he and Garp stay somewhat in contact. During Water 7, Garp revealed that Dragon had told him about his meeting with Luffy at Logtown, and of course Dragon assumedly gave Luffy to Garp to raise, so this relationship, not good at the moment, but it does appear to have healed at least a bit over time. Although Dragon uses a very special word to describe Garp, a word that Garp does not dispute. This word in Japanese is kebetsu, which is like a much stronger way of saying hate or despise. Those words feel quite light and generic compared to this. But this is the birth of the Dragon scowl. The face he's making here is much more what I'm used to seeing with Dragon. There's no more innocence, there's no more hope. Dragon has seen the true face of this world, and he is determined to destroy it. And before moving on, this chapter, very excitingly, also contained a character that I'm not sure I ever expected to see again. And if you look at the first panel of Garp in hospital, to his left is a curiously shaped fellow, and this appears to be a very young Dr. Fishbonen, who we've only ever seen once, and it was in chapter 594. He was the doctor overseeing Kobe's recovery, and he was also the one who diagnosed Kobe with Haki. As in, he concluded that Kobe was a Haki user, not that he used Haki as part of the diagnosis process. Although, that would be fun too. Why don't more people do that? Surely there's got to be like some sort of medical use of observation Haki to like see into body. I'm getting off topic. But with that, we are officially back to the Elbaf portion of this Elbaf flashback. And And it really is refreshing to see a lot of these characters again, especially Ida. We've been stuck in Rock's world for so many months that I almost forgot she existed, and that I now need to be extremely worried about her because she is a mother in a One Piece flashback. But I also feel like Ida has been extremely important in this flashback because she has been one of the sole sources of optimism for Harold, Harudin, and Loki, and also us as readers. So I'm very glad to see her again. But we do have a delightfully painful scene of Loki and Rox, and on this occasion Rox is not beating up a child, and we have Loki revealing that he thinks that Rox is the sun god Nika. And as it turns out, Rox didn't know who Nika was, which is slightly surprising given how much knowledge of the past he seems to have. He does know about Joy Boy at the very least, but then again he does come from the Davy side of this, and this really does add a lot to the idea that the descendants of Davy Jones and Joy Boy may be the ones referred to in the Harley text, the ones that never end up meeting, and the ones that will only meet at the end of the Third World. And Rox does this by claiming that Harold is the one who could have the kind of power that Loki's talking about. He is the one who could become the sun god, and if they joined forces, then no one would be capable of stopping them. Really putting a lot of pressure on Luffy and Blackbeard to somehow join together as well, which that's going to be a task. The story of Rox and Harold is one of pure tragedy. Two people who enjoyed each other's company and believed in one another, but their methods were too different. Whereas Luffy and Blackbeard, they keibetsu the crap out of one another. And it's not unprecedented for Luffy to get over that and work with someone like he did with Gangsta Gastino. But I guess we have a very interesting future to look forward to with that question. And at the very least, I think this should inform Loki's willingness to work with Luffy because he understands the tragedy of not combining forces, and once he sees Luffy's Gear 5th abilities, Loki may renounce his sun god role and take up the role that Rox was playing in order to support Luffy, the man who is displaying the abilities that Rox said Harold had access to. Because right now it seems like Loki's trying to do both. No one will cooperate with him, so he's trying to be both Rox and Harold. And that's working out about as well for him as it did for Rox and Harold. And speaking of Mr. Harold, this is a massive chapter for him as he is entering scary territory right now. We catch up with him mercilessly beating up another giant who was terrorizing some humans, and even the human victims, they're standing there going, oh, that Harold is going too far. And Harold, he's doing the thing it is that I talked about months ago. He is trying to quell the impression of the brutality and fear of the giants by becoming the most brutal and the most feared of all of the giants. He has taken such a sharp turn from a younger, more diplomatic Harold, the man who inspired so many human nations to send food to Elbaf in order to end their famine. But the guy in this chapter, no one's sending food to this guy. And I get that this is still fresh off Rox's death, and Harold, he feels beyond guilty. From his perspective, he let Rox die. Maybe that generational guilt will also play into Loki helping Luffy to not make the same mistake that Father Summer did. But this isn't just a passing raw moment. It has morphed into full-on self-loathing because Harold, he's saying that he won't forgive crimes committed by giants, and to all of the people watching, it looks like he's talking about the dude he just beat up. But in reality, Harold is actually talking about himself. He now views himself and his race as inherently, look, I don't know if evil is the right word, it might be, but he is blaming the fact that he is a giant for him letting Rox die, which unfortunately gives us exactly what we've been waiting for. As Harold sets sail to Marineford, and on the very same ground that saw the invasion of Golden Lion Shiki as well as the Paramount War, Harold kneels and rips off his horns, begging to atone for the crime that is the existence of the giants. And this is speaking the language of the world government. Buccaneers, for example, have been referred to as people who have committed the crime of existing, as has Nico Robin, the Will of D, and so many others. And I really don't like where this is going because the newspaper articles about Harold, they may be propaganda, but they may also be correct. He could be turning into a mad king. If he genuinely believes that the giants are inherently evil, then sure, he may do everything he can to strive to create peace. But if Harold eventually comes to the conclusion that giants cannot be fixed and that peace can never happen, and that giants existing is a crime against humanity, then that could give us the answer to the slaughter in Orist Castle and why Harold had to be killed. And I really want to say that Harold has a better plan and isn't succumbing to this scenario, but it just really bothers me that he's using the language of the world government now, and that he seems to genuinely believe it. And just as Garp told Sengoku in this very chapter that he would kill Sengoku if his mind was ever corrupted by this world government ideology, this could be foreshadowing for the need to kill Harold after he adopts that same corruption, no matter how well-intentioned he may be. And don't get me wrong, the death of Rox was extremely sad, but this is a One Piece flashback. Extremely sad, that does not meet the bar for a flashback. And this is the beginning of the true gut-wrenching tragedy of the Elbaf arc. And you let me know what your questions, comments, and predictions for the future are in the comments below.